October 8, 1918, 08:20 hours, Argonne Forest, France. Corporal Alvin York pressed himself against the wet earth, bolt-action rifle tight against his shoulder. Around him, the undergrowth exploded in splinters and dirt as German machine gun fire tore through the woods. 25 yards ahead, muzzle flashes winked from concealed positions on the hillside. Behind him, 6 of his comrades lay dead in the mud. 3 more were bleeding, pressing hands against wounds. The rest huddled behind whatever cover they could find, guarding the dozen German prisoners they'd just captured minutes before everything went to hell. York was 30 years old, a Tennessee farmer who'd grown up shooting squirrels for the dinner table, a man who'd tried to claim conscientious objector status when America entered the war, a Christian fundamentalist who didn't believe in killing. Now he was the ranking soldier in what remained of a 17-man patrol deep behind enemy lines, pinned down by perhaps 90 German soldiers equipped with 35 machine guns. The German gunners had the high ground. They had superior firepower. They had York trapped in the open with nowhere to run. What they didn't have was the slightest idea who they were shooting at, the making of a marksman. Alvin York was born in a 2-room log cabin in Pall Mall, Tennessee, on December 13, 1887, third of 11 children. The York family survived on subsistence farming and whatever game could be hunted in the surrounding hills. Young Alvin received exactly 9 months of formal schooling before his father pulled him from class. The family needed him working the farm, hunting meat for the table. Those years in the Tennessee mountains created something the German army would later encounter with fatal consequences, one of the finest natural shooters America ever produced. York learned to hunt with a muzzle-loading rifle where one shot was all you got. Miss your target, watch your family go hungry. It bred a particular kind of precision. The ability to judge distance, wind, the exact moment to squeeze the trigger. York became known throughout Fentress County for winning turkey shoots, competitions where shooters demonstrated impossible accuracy at improbable ranges. By age 28, he'd transformed into something else entirely. After his father's death in 1911, York had spiraled into drinking and brawling. Then, in 1915, something changed. A religious conversion during a revival meeting. York became a fundamentalist Christian, joined the Church of Christ in Christian Union, stopped drinking, stopped fighting. When the draft notice arrived in 1917, he genuinely believed killing was sin. His church's pastor supported his claim for conscientious objector status. The draft board disagreed. York reported to Camp Gordon, Georgia, in November 1917. Assigned to Company G, 328th Infantry Regiment, 82nd Division. His company commander, Captain Edward Danforth, and battalion commander, Major George Buxton, both took interest in this tall Tennessee marksman who questioned the morality of war. They didn't mock him, they reasoned with him, quoted scripture about rendering unto Caesar, discussed the concept of a just war, of protecting innocent lives by stopping aggression. Somewhere in those conversations, York reconciled his faith with his duty. He would serve, he would fight if called upon, but he would trust that God would preserve him if his cause was righteous. In May 1918, the 82nd Division shipped to France. York carried his Bible and his diary everywhere. He didn't drink with the other soldiers, didn't curse, didn't seek out the French women who waited near the camps. He wrote letters home and attended church services whenever possible. His fellow soldiers considered him peculiar but reliable. When the 82nd Division moved toward the Western Front in July, York moved with them, ready for whatever came next. What came next was the Meuse-Argonne Offensive. The final push. September 26, 1918. The Allies launched what would become the largest American military operation of World War I. Objective: break through the German defensive lines in the Argonne Forest, cut the Hindenburg Line, force Germany to surrender. 9 U.S. divisions in the first wave. 4 more in reserve. The terrain was nightmare geometry, dense forest, rolling hills, marshland. 4 years of German fortifications turning every ridge into a killing ground. Company G received orders to advance through a sector near Hill 223, tasked with cutting the Decauville Railroad that supplied German positions deeper in the forest. The company moved forward and immediately took devastating fire from machine gun nests dug into the hillsides. Men fell in clusters. The advance stalled. Sergeant Bernard Early received orders to take a small patrol behind the German lines, find a gap, flank the machine guns. 17 men, Early in command, Corporals York, William Cutting, and Murray Savage, each leading squads of 3 or 4 soldiers. They moved out before dawn on October 8th, navigating through woods and marsh, working their way behind the German front line. Around 600 hours, they surprised a group of German medics and chased them directly into a German command post positioned in a shallow valley. The Americans burst into the headquarters before the Germans could react, captured the entire command post, took prisoners. Among them, First Lieutenant Paul Jürgen Vollmer, commanding the 1st Battalion, 125th Reserve Infantry Regiment. York and his men began gathering the captured Germans when machine gun fire erupted from the hillside above them. German gunners from positions overlooking the command post had spotted the Americans. They opened fire. Savage's squad was wiped out instantly. All 4 men killed in the first burst. Murray's squad took casualties. Cutting was wounded. Early took a bullet and went down hard. In seconds, 9 of the 17 Americans were dead or wounded. The survivors scrambled for cover, except for the soldiers now guarding the growing group of German prisoners, and 1 man caught in the open with no time to dive for shelter. Corporal Alvin York. 1 against many. York later described it in his diary. Those machine guns were spitting fire and cutting down the undergrowth all around me, something awful. The Germans were yelling orders. You never heard such a racket in all of your life. I didn't have time to dodge behind a tree or dive into the brush. I didn't even have time to kneel or lie down. As soon as the machine guns opened fire on me, I began to exchange shots with them. He was in the prone position now, bolt-action Springfield rifle to his shoulder, the same shooting position he'd used in countless turkey shoots back home. German gunners raised their heads to aim. York squeezed the trigger. 1 shot, 1 kill, worked the bolt, found another target, squeezed again. He methodically eliminated machine gunners with the same calm precision he'd once used on Tennessee squirrels. At one point, 6 German soldiers fixed bayonets and rushed his position, attempting to overrun him before he could reload. York dropped the rifle, drew his .45 caliber pistol, shot the farthest man first, then the next, working from back to front. A trick he'd learned turkey hunting. Shoot the nearest bird first, the others scatter. Shoot the farthest first, the others keep coming, giving you more targets. All 6 Germans fell before reaching him. Lieutenant Vollmer watched this display from where the German prisoners were gathered under American guard. He'd emptied his own pistol trying to kill York. Every shot missed. Now he witnessed this lone American rifleman systematically destroying his machine gun positions, watched his soldiers die one after another, recognized that the situation was untenable. Vollmer spoke English. He called out to York, offered to order his men to surrender if York would cease fire. York agreed. Vollmer blew his whistle, shouted commands in German. Machine guns went silent. German soldiers began emerging from their positions, hands raised. The surviving Americans, including the wounded, now guarded approximately 90 prisoners. York was left in command with maybe 7 unwounded soldiers. The problem was getting these prisoners back to American lines while moving through German-occupied territory where their own artillery might mistake them for a German counterattack. York made Vollmer lead the column, used him to signal German units they encountered to surrender rather than fight. By the time the procession reached American lines, York had collected 132 German prisoners. His men had captured 35 machine guns. York himself was credited with personally killing 25 enemy soldiers, though later investigations suggested the number might have been higher. When York reported to Brigadier General Julian Robert Lindsay, the general stared at the mass of German prisoners and remarked, "Well, York, I hear you have captured the whole German army." York replied, "No, sir, I got only 132. The reckoning. York was promoted to sergeant, awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, later upgraded to the Medal of Honor. He received decorations from France, Italy, and Montenegro. General John Pershing called him the greatest civilian soldier of World War I. York remained at the front until November 1st, 10 days before the armistice. He survived the war without serious injury. The man who'd questioned whether he could kill in good conscience had proven himself the deadliest American soldier in the forest that day. But York never gloried in it. He consistently downplayed his actions, refused to capitalize on his fame. When Hollywood offered money for his story, he initially declined, eventually agreed only so the proceeds could fund a school for underprivileged children in Tennessee, the Alvin York Agricultural Institute, which still operates today. When World War II began, York tried to re-enlist as an infantryman. He was 54 years old, diabetic, suffering from arthritis. The army commissioned him as a major in the Signal Corps instead, put him on bond drives and morale tours. In every newspaper headline, in every introduction, he remained Sergeant York, the rank he'd earned in those woods, the identity that mattered. What happened in the Argonne Forest on October 8, 1918, wasn't the story of a man who wanted to kill 132 Germans. It was the story of a man who didn't want to kill anyone, thrust into circumstances where duty demanded action and survival required excellence. York brought to war the skills learned in peacetime poverty, marksmanship honed by hunger, calm forged by faith, the ability to act when others might freeze. The German investigation conducted in 1929 concluded that York's official record corresponds with the facts, even as they disputed some specific numbers. What remained undisputed: one American soldier, caught in the open, outgunned and surrounded, had turned the tables on a vastly superior force through sheer skill and will. York died on September 2, 1964, 76 years old, buried in Wolf River Cemetery, Pall Mall, Tennessee, not far from where he'd learned to shoot. The man who captured 132 Germans had simply wanted to go home to his mountains. When duty called, he answered. When the moment came, he acted. And when it was over, he walked away from the glory, back to the life he'd always known. That might be the most remarkable part of the story. Not what he did in the Argonne Forest, but what he did after. He remained Alvin York, Tennessee farmer, Christian, teacher, a man who understood that real heroism isn't in seeking recognition. It's in doing what needs doing, then moving on to the next task. The undergrowth in the Argonne Forest has long since regrown where York made his stand. The machine gun positions are silent. The soldiers who fell that day, American and German alike, have been resting for over a century. What remains is the story. One man, one moment, one choice that defined not just a battle but a character. No cigarette needed, just accuracy, courage, and faith.